Alright, I'm converting a headlight assembly from the original incandescent bulbs to LEDs. Damn it, Katie. This is what the original assembly looks like. If you look, these are the high beams and the low beams. They fit right in these holes. They just kind of slide in there. One faces down and one faces forward, so that you have front beams and forward beams. They're actually the same voltage, so there's not really high and low. It's just what direction they're pointed. If you look in here, one bulb contacts this tab, the other bulb contacts this tab. And on this back side here, this little spot right here is where you connect the positive wire from your dynamo or generator, whatever you want to call it. And the negative is transferred through ground or through the body of the bicycle and up through, so you can complete the connection. And then on the top it has a switch. It turns left and right, and left side is one bulb, right side is the other bulb. And it works fine, but that dynamo really slows you down when it's on the side of your tire. It's like when you're on flat ground, it's like pedaling slightly uphill. And when you're riding for a long time, it really adds up. So we're going to convert this one to an LED headlight. So we got some sacrificial flashlights. This is together complete. She's pretty bright. Works good. Runs off of 3 AAAs. This is an exploded view of how this cluster is held in there. So it goes little plastic clear piece on the front, then this benzyl, and then the headlight cluster. Go away, kitty. And then this spring to this piece of metal, and through the spring and the piece of metal that contacts the outside of this housing. See, it's a little bit shiny. That's the negative side, and then the switch connects it so it turns on. Well, this is the LED clusters we're going to be using. It's got a spring on the back that contacts the batteries. And if you look, you can see 2 rings on it. One ring in the center is the positive, and the outside ring of the lighter color, that's the negative. And the spring actually connects right here, here, and right here, and right here on those pieces of solder. That way it connects the negative to this LED cluster. And they're actually quite bright, so the idea behind this one then would be to bypass the headlight or the flashlight case assembly. My extra parts here in a glass so I can keep track of them. So what I've done is, on this one, the center of it's positive and the outside's negative. So I soldered these 2 wires on there, nice and solid, and they conduct fairly well. I can show you an example real quick of how this works. Of course, one wire would be negative and one wire would be positive. And if I connect backwards, you can see that's quite bright. So, in order to get the LED clusters to fit in these holes, first we're going to remove the incandescent bulbs and their little holder things. We'll save them for later, for a different project probably. Now this benzyl actually is the perfect size to fit right in that hole pretty snugly. So there's your reflector on the back. It won't stay in there. I'm going to make sure it stays when I'm done with it. And for this top one, if you look, the top hole is actually a little bit smaller. It still has prongs on there, but it's a smaller diameter. And if you look, there's a bunch of play in there, so that's not going to work. So, in order to overcome that, hang on, I'll be right back. Alright, the way I got the second light to fit in, the first one, it's in there, it's kind of snug, needs to be attached properly, but it's enough that it'll stay on there. The other one, if I take this benzyl and turn it around backwards than the way it's supposed to go, it'll fit in there, and the 4 prongs fit up through every other hole in the benzol. But of course every other hole, well all the holes actually, have an LED in them. So I took this piece here, this is the same cluster, but I took half of every other LED out of the outside. Now since they're wired in parallel and not series, then this won't affect the overall voltage that it runs off of, since they're all basically connected together. I'll go over series and parallel a little bit more when we connect the power pack in. But this way, with every other hole open, you can see that it's got 4 on the outside instead of 8. Now I can take this benzol, put the LED cluster backwards into it, and it will fit. Let me put that in first. And that goes like that. And then if you look, yes, it is recessed more than the others. It's the low beam, so it's not going to be an issue. But it actually fits in there quite nicely. It's loose. I'm going to make sure it's attached when I finally get it done. But there's your low beams. So I got my high beams and my low beams all wired up. Now I just have to do the solder work to connect this pair and this pair of wires to the existing switch. And then I picked up an extra toggle switch. It was like, I don't know, $2 at Radio Shack, something like that. Pretty cheap. Also made sure I got enough solder. I like to use 60/40, works good for me. And if I needed them, I got some diodes, but that was just an alternate way to wire it, and I don't think I'm going to be needing those. So I'm going to get started with the actual wiring of this project, and I'll get back to you. Well, I got all the wiring done. It's ready to be fastened together and closed up. That'll be another step. But if you want to take a look, it might not make much sense to most of you, but the way I have it wired up is I bypass the ground system where it grounds through the bike, or the negative, and I took the negative and positive out the side with some extra speaker wire that I had, and it runs down to a battery pack. As for in here, you can see where the light bulbs originally touched the conductors there. Well, I just took that clean spot on each one and I soldered on the wires that go to the LED lights, and then I twisted all the negatives together, and there's where the negatives meet, of course, and they go out to the power pack. And while I was in there, I had a switch on the side here. So I'll show you how it works real quick. I just got this battery pack kind of mocked up. It needs work still. That'd be the next step after the headlight. So I'll hold that together. Alright, now the switches between high beams and low beams. It's hard to hold the wires down on the camera at the same time, but high beams and low beams. Well, the switch on the side is just a jumper between the two positives, between the two clusters. So all that does is tie the two together so they both come on. My friend John wanted a bright light. I'm really hoping that this will be bright enough for him and not run on a dynamo. So next is a battery pack. I got to get that figured out. And I'm thinking the best bet to stick these benzols into the back of the light. I think the best idea would be automotive grade RTV. I love that stuff. So I got some RTV there. I'm going to go ahead and start that to get it glued up and then start drying while I'm working on the battery pack. Alright, and a little bit later I got the housing put all back together. It's got the clusters in there all ready to go. I ran the wires out to a makeshift battery pack. I think I'm going to take 2 of these and wire them in parallel so that you still get 4.5 volts, but you have twice the capacity. But I just kind of threw that together. It works. It's actually got a button on each end. They both work, so that can be kind of confusing. So I'm going to have to come up with something better for the battery. But there's on and off switches on here. I didn't realize that this switch was not an off and either or switch. It's actually either or. The only way you could turn this headlight off when it was original was to take the dynamo or generator off of the tire, and that would turn the light off. As long as the generator was turning, the light was on. Well, I didn't realize this, so I'll either put another switch in here for on and off, or just use this. It works. So I got high beams and low beams. If you look, the low beams are on the table there, high beams up there. Low, high. Worked out pretty good, and they're actually pretty bright. Now the switch that I wired in here, no matter if it's on high or low, doesn't matter. Flip the switch and both come on. So now no matter which selection you've got up here, both clusters are on. Should be lows and highs together. So, got this all figured. It's all done. I got to do one little thing on the inside, and that's attach some wires more safely so that they don't touch each other or anything like that. But for this little battery pack, you know, 4 AAA or 3 AAAs, it seems to work pretty well. But I'll run it off of 6 just for more power. Well, thanks for watching. Oh, before I go, here's one last look on the inside. See that blue is the RTV glue that's holding everything in. I put tape on the backs of these printed circuit boards because I didn't want anything to ground out. Tape on the back of that switch there so it's covered. And those two are both positive. Even if they touch, it won't be a problem because it'll just light both lights up. So, also a piece of tape right there on those connections because they're negative actually. So, there it is.